Hey everyone, this is Ivana from AL.com, back to you on your lunch break conversations. Today I have a really special guest. His name is Jacob Voss, and he is from Huntsville. And he is currently in a situation where he is trying to get home his wife and his newly adopted son home from Uganda. They have been over there, his wife has been over there for the process of adopting. That adoption is final. And Mr. Voss has just been trying to get them back home. There is one flight leaving from Uganda tomorrow amid this coronavirus pandemic. So I'm just going to throw it over to Jacob and let him kind of tell a little bit about his story and about the situation that he's currently facing.
Yeah. Well, thank you for having me on. Yeah, so I guess my story kind of starts maybe around 2015. We went to Uganda, and my wife had been prior to that, but we felt a tug for a specific child that we just knew we had a tug to. So about 2016, when we got back, we were doing these little 10-day trips, but sometime in 2016, we were like, let's do this. Let's go through the adoption process. And so sometime in 2016, we decided let's put the paperwork in to become eligible adoptive parents. That's with the U.S. government, and there's some forms to do that, but it involves a home study and all the things that you've got to do to become adoptive parents. So we were granted that, and then in October of 2018, my wife moved to Uganda to fulfill the requirements to adopt. And so she's been living there for 18 months, really all in the hopes to get a visa for my son's passport so that he could come home. So we were issued the final adoption order by the High Court of Uganda in August of 2019. And then we were issued an adoption certificate. It's kind of like a birth certificate, but an adoption certificate, kind of a formal document that we included into a packet that we sent to the government in November of 2019. So my wife has been there for 18 months, going on 18 months, and we've been trying to get her home since November. The U.S. Department of State and the U.S. Embassy has had all the documentation that they needed to give a visa to us. Our adoption was final in country, so we're done with the Uganda side of things. We were done with that really in August, but we'll say November. So we've been trying to get her home since November, but haven't had any luck. Interestingly enough, if you can remember back a few months ago, maybe around the January time frame, some Americans were killed at the embassy in Kenya, and that just raised some alarms. I had family and friends and myself just really concerned for her safety. And so I reached out to one of our local House of Representative members in Congress and requested that they expedite the process to get my son a visa so they could come home. And we were told, their office was told by USCIS and Department of State that the only way we would expedite a visa was if, number one, there was a health crisis or a medical emergency, or a change from a level 2 to a level 4 travel advisory change by the Department of State. Interestingly enough, I tried to tell them, well, Americans had just been killed in Kenya like that month, and they didn't raise the travel advisory any. And so I was just kind of beaten down that, like, there's no, if people are dying, and they're not changing the travel advisory, well, that certainly is not going to be the case for me. Okay, well, fast forward to today. The world is aware of what's happening in America, in Italy, certainly in China and Asia, and we're in a different place now. We do have a health crisis, and we do have a global travel for advisory, which are the grounds to expedite this visa. And what we've been trying to do, I've gotten 4 senators involved and 2 House members involved, and they're requesting status. They're trying to push this visa to be stamped in my son's passport. But what the embassies in Uganda are saying is that they can't fast track anything. They can't do anything to get my family home. And this is not a Ugandan process. This is a Department of State U.S. Embassy process. They've had documentation since November of 2018 to make a determination on getting a stamp in my son's passport. There's things rapidly changing in Uganda. So Uganda's president closed their borders. I think it was Saturday. No entering, exiting via land, air, or water. And so I tried my best to get my wife and son on a flight to Singapore. It took a lot of. I was on the phone for like 10 hours with like my attorneys, State Department, my agency, senators, and so we came up with a good plan. Well, let's get my wife and son on a plane to Singapore on the last flight leaving Uganda, because Singapore doesn't need a visa, so he could just go with his Uganda passport. And so we tried that. My wife stopped by the U.S. Embassy at 10 o'clock that morning, was denied entry into the into the embassy because she didn't have an appointment. And there they told her that she did not need to go on the flight to Singapore, and that Ugandan nationals were not allowed out of the country. So she didn't catch that flight, and that was the last flight out. I've since heard that the U.S. government is sending a flight on Wednesday at 3:20 p.m.
And that's tomorrow, Wednesday.
Tomorrow, yeah. So just they're 8 hours ahead of us, so okay. It's roughly 7:15 p.m. their time. So really not much time at all. She would have to get a visa first thing in the morning for him to get on that flight. And this is what I've been trying to get our Department of State and our senators involved in, is to go ahead and issue this visa. I understand. So they do this. We're in what they call the I-604 investigation. Mm-hmm. And that's just really to make sure that we're not child trafficking. It's all really good things meant for really good reasons. Again, they've had information since November of 2019. My wife's lived in country for 18 months. I mean, there's not a stone unturned in my life. They have every financial information. They have my house. They know where I live, my cell phone. They know where my family lives, my family's family. I mean, I just think they have the information to determine if they can give him a visa to come home. I have been told that if there's interest and things get bad enough, there may be other flights available. I just need, I just want this to become there's an awareness there, so that I'm sure my wife's not the only one in this circumstance. There should be, just recently I heard that Colombia is go ahead and pulling families into courts, approving their adoptions, and stamping visas so those families can get out, like all in like one day. And so our agencies kind of spoke up and it's like, wait, let me make sure I'm hearing this correctly. You want to bring families that don't have a final decree of adoption, give them a final decree, and then issue a visa. She's like, and they said, yes, you're hearing that right. She's like, I have a family in Uganda that got their final decree in August of 2019. All we need is a visa, and some reason we can't get this done. I really don't understand. When I hear on TV, I hear President Trump and Mike Pence talk about, Vice President Mike Pence talk about, we're doing every effort to get these Americans home. But I truly believe that they are doing every effort. But there's a disconnect between the State Department and the United States here in America and what's actually happening on the ground in some of these countries. And so our government needs to look at, hey, if they're completely in our hands, if they're out of the host country's hands, if they're in our hands, let's do every effort we can to get these Americans home. I sent an email to you. I think I think about 7:30, just kind of telling you, hey, the first case in Uganda is already, of COVID-19 is already hit, and so there's some really bad things that could happen. I mean, what could be very bad. We're talking about supply chain issues here with food. I can't go get meat locally. Certainly everybody knows about the toilet paper issues and the supply chain issues with that. Certainly masks and other supplies. but then you hear things like we don't have enough beds for citizens to get on. I think I heard that here locally we have about 1,200 hospital beds, and that's not anywhere close. Well, she's in a country that has virtually no hospital beds, that will do no social distancing, and that share germs like crazy. And so my only hope is that the warm climate there will prevent this spread from being what it could be, and what we're seeing in other countries like Italy and even America now.
Right, and I wanted to just jump in. I don't mean to get you off your track, and we got some more people that are getting on our video, and just to recap, kind of your family is not necessarily in the hands of the Ugandan government at this point. They have done all of their paperwork and have gotten cleared by the Ugandan government. They're just waiting on the American government to be able to get them safely out of Uganda and into the United States. Back to Huntsville, where you are, and get them. And it seems like the holdup there is what you have been saying, is it your son's visa? Now, I've just got a lot of well wishers in the comments and stuff. I was just checking on my phone of it just to see if there were any questions or anything. It looks like there's just a lot of well wishers and that say they're with you and they are thinking about you and your family. And I know you were talking about some of the struggles that Uganda might face in this pandemic, and it looks like they have not necessarily gotten hit as hard yet. I know you said that you thought there was maybe one case confirmed right now, but I know you were talking about the hospital beds. That's been an issue here in America. And in Uganda, I know we're keeping the names and the city and everything of your family private, just for safety reasons. But you did say they were in kind of a rural area. So is it fair to say that you don't expect them to have the same precautions and the same things that we have here in America, in Alabama, to protect us from COVID-19 or to keep us as safe as possible? Maybe they don't have those same things over there?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, going back to your first question, we are completely in the United States hands. We're done with the host country's processes. We were able to give all documentation required by the United States. They call it the I-600 packet. We were sent that in November of 2019. So they have everything in their hands to make a determination to get my family home. Your second question is the infrastructure. So they don't have a medical infrastructure there. They are in a landlocked country, so they have no ports of entry. Like most of the supplies and food and things like that come through Kenya. But let's all just put our minds in on what this thing could be, this COVID-19 virus, what it could be, and how it could ravish the country. Am I a firm believer that if things get to what they could be, that food will continue to come through Kenya into Uganda? I can't see another country providing food to another country. If it got really, really bad, do I think that they would keep the food for their own citizens? And I think the answer is probably yes. Since I sent you that email at 7:30 yesterday, I told you they've already got their first case. Well, I turn on the news and look, and now they've got 8 new cases, and they're quarantining people. There has already been violence on the ground, so people in Uganda are the locals are. They're looking at this disease and they understand that it's coming from a foreign place. And so there's been some violence with families that own organizations in Uganda. I've heard someone was burned alive recently. There's just really bad things happening on the ground there.
Just a lot of civil unrest.
There's a lot of civil unrest. And we see that a little bit here, right? And now we're not killing people, but we see people fighting over toilet paper, right? Let's take that to a third world country. To give you an example, 2 days ago, my wife was walking on Main Street. And by the way, my son is adopted from a rural area, but they're in a city, in a larger city. So she was walking on Main Street, and someone just started screaming and pointing at her, Corona, Corona, Corona. And so she's freaked out, like we got to go, we got to go, we got to go. It's just there's been a lot of things happen over this 18 months that have been like, wow, there's a lot of family and friends that have said you've got to write a book and share your story about things that have happened to you. And we'll do that at some point just for, but now is what we're seeing on the ground is very dangerous. And I just think that, right now she's in a place that we have multiple armed guards. We feel safe. I think she's got enough rice and beans should something happen right now. But that's limited, right? So I can't get stuff in my Publix, Walmart, things like that. Well, her one supermarket over there, when it goes, it goes. And so.
Right. Well, and is she and your son, are they self-quarantining, or are they kind of social distancing? Are they taking measures to stay at home and stay away from other people?
I don't think social distancing is going to be a thing over there. Their way of life doesn't lend themselves to distance from others. There may be social distancing with small groups, but I can't see them being capable to distance from one another individually. It's just there's not a way of the way of life doesn't lend itself to be able to do that. I mean, there's people that cook for other people.
Got it. Well,
Yeah.
and tell me, how do you and how does your wife explain to a 7-year-old? I know that I'm not a parent, but I know parents here have a hard time explaining to their children what's going on. And again, you take that to a country like Uganda where things are different and they don't have the infrastructure that we have here. Here, a lot of kids are able to do virtual schooling, are able to do a lot of those things and keep a little bit of a normal life as much as possible. But how do you explain to your 7-year-old son what is going on and keep him from being just in total panic mode?
Yeah, they're pretty aware. If not, maybe not about the virus itself and COVID-19, but they are aware of like why are things changing. He broke down in my wife's arms a couple days ago because there's no more school, so they canceled school, and he's just like, I don't want to go to school. He's really upset, and probably into a 7-year-old's mind, that's everything, right?
Right.
Friends, social life, learning. So they sense. He's certainly sensing something's different than what has been. I think my wife is just trying to be really strong and be somewhat of a foundation for him. But I think at the same time, I think she's scared, and she's trying to stay strong herself.
Right. Well, and too, I'm just looking at some of our comments, and just if people are just jumping on, just to clear things up, the Voss family did not just randomly go to Uganda recently. Mr. Voss's wife has been over in Uganda since 2018, trying to formally adopt their son. That adoption was finalized in 2019, and they are just still waiting on the visa for their son. So just to clear up some of that in the comments for people who jump in later on and don't get haven't caught up to the full story. So I know, Mr. Voss, you got a lot going on, and you're trying to get your story out as much as possible and trying to get your family on that plane tomorrow.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, I can't imagine that we're the only family going through this. If I was in an elevator with someone and they said, what do you want me to do? It probably is not a selfish thing. I don't want them to treat me differently than other people. I just think that where you have families in all of these countries where it's in your hands to make a determination, go ahead and make the determination as fast as you can to get these American families out. I'm not expecting American government to get involved with foreign government processes, but where it is in an American process, in our case, it's in the I-604 investigation process, do what you got to do and put the people on that you need to put the people on to make this turnaround as quick as possible to get these American citizens home and these families home.
Right. Well, and I hope that all Alabama lawmakers are watching this today. I hope that we can send it to them, get your story to them, and get you and your family safe and home in Huntsville, and that you can welcome your son home to America for the first time, and to Alabama. I might be a little bit biased, but it's my home. So I'm thinking about you. It looks like all of our people in Facebook are thinking about you and giving support. So please, Mr. Voss, let us know if, the updates in your story, and good luck to you and your family. And we appreciate your time.
Yeah, certainly. Thank you so much for having